Today, I want to share with you a powerful truth, a divine secret hidden in a psalm that cancels every curse of poverty. Poverty is more than a lack of money. It is a cycle of fear, limitation, and missed destiny. But what if I told you there is a supernatural key, a spiritual weapon that can break that chain forever? This key is found in the timeless wisdom of Psalm 112. This psalm is not just poetry, it is a declaration of God's power over poverty. It reveals the characteristics and promises given to those who walk in righteousness and trust. Promises that bring blessing, stability, and provision even in the toughest times. Whether you're struggling to pay bills, facing unemployment, or feeling trapped by financial pressure, this message is for you. As we dive into these 8 powerful principles, get ready to shift your mindset, unlock divine favor, and step into the abundance God has prepared for you. If this message speaks to your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs breakthrough today. Poverty is not merely the absence of money, it is the absence of revelation. Until you understand this, you'll keep treating symptoms while the root disease thrives. Psalm 112, the psalm that breaks the back of poverty, doesn't start with dollar signs. It begins with reverence. Blessed is the man who fears the Lord, who greatly delights in his commandments. Psalm 112, 1. The first cure to the curse of poverty is not in your wallet, but in your worship. When a person fears the Lord, meaning they honor, revere, and obey him wholeheartedly, they unlock a divine transaction. Heaven's economy is unleashed in their direction. The curse of poverty is broken not by chance or charity, but by covenant. In many parts of the world, people chase after financial freedom with desperation, ignoring spiritual principles. But spiritual violation leads to physical manifestation. Let me explain. In the book of Genesis, Adam lacked nothing. Eden was a prototype of divine provision. Adam was in perfect relationship with God, and everything he needed was already created and waiting. But once sin entered, disobedience unlocked the curse. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food. Genesis 3:19. Sweat became man's new paycheck. What changed? Relationship. Poverty was not Adam's environment. It became his condition once he stepped outside of divine alignment. This is why Psalm 112 is so powerful. It restores what was lost through misalignment. It's not just a declaration. It's a re-establishment of kingdom order. It speaks of those who fear God, delight in His word, and are established in truth. Then, and only then, does the psalm say, wealth and riches will be in His house. In today's world, we often see wealth as a result of hustle, but according to God's word, wealth is a result of honor. Let me share a story. A young man I once mentored was a gifted entrepreneur. He started 3 businesses, all of which failed. He tried everything, marketing, branding, financial coaching, but nothing worked. One day, broken and at rock bottom, he opened the Bible and read Psalm 112. The phrase "delights greatly in His commandments" stirred his heart. For the first time, he asked God, "What do you want me to do?" That night, he felt led to start a mentoring program for underprivileged teens, something he'd always brushed off as not profitable. Within 6 months, grants began pouring in. Local news picked up his story. His nonprofit became a multi-million-dollar organization. He told me, the moment I aligned my vision with God's mission, provision started chasing me. The curse of poverty is cancelled when your purpose aligns with His principles. Psalm 112 teaches us that poverty is first a spiritual deficit, poverty of obedience, poverty of wisdom, poverty of purpose. And where there is spiritual lack, financial struggle is often a symptom. This is not prosperity gospel. It's kingdom economics. You don't cancel poverty by simply naming and claiming wealth. You do it by returning to the source of provision, the God of abundance, and he honors those who honor him. The psalmist shows us that fearing the Lord is not about being afraid, it's about being aligned. It's a covenant of trust, love, and surrender. In closing this keynote, understand this. You can work 80 nowadays, attend business seminars, learn all the investment strategies, but if you are spiritually disconnected, you will never feel full, never feel safe, and never walk in lasting provision. Psalm 112 cancels the curse of poverty not by increasing your cash, but by increasing your connection. That's where true wealth begins. The second key to understanding how this psalm cancels every curse of poverty is found in the consistent theme of obedience. Psalm 112 doesn't just say, "Blessed is the man who fears the Lord." It immediately follows with the phrase, "His descendants will be mighty on earth. The generation of the upright will be blessed." Psalm 112:2. This blessing is generational, passed down not by luck, but through obedience and righteousness. In the spiritual economy, obedience is the currency that unlocks favor and provision. The moment you decide to walk in God's ways, you step out of the poverty mindset and into a realm where divine multiplication begins to happen. Let me explain this in a way that's easy to grasp. Think about a seed planted in fertile soil. The seed obeys its nature, it pushes through the earth and grows into a tree. But if that same seed lands on rock or in drought, it will not grow, regardless of how hard it tries. In life, God's commandments and principles are that fertile soil. When we choose to obey, we give ourselves the best environment for growth. A powerful example from history is the story of Joseph in the Bible. Joseph faced tremendous trials, betrayal by his brothers, slavery, false accusations, and imprisonment. Yet, he maintained his obedience and integrity. He refused to give in to bitterness or compromise. Because of his unwavering obedience to God's principles, Joseph was elevated from prison to palace. He became the second most powerful man in Egypt and was used by God to save nations from famine. Genesis 41. Obedience in God's economy is not about legalism. It's about trust and alignment. The psalmist declares that the obedient man's heart is firm, trusting in the Lord. Psalm 112:7. When your heart is firm, you become unshakable. Poverty tries to shake you with fear and anxiety, but obedience builds an inner fortress. In the real world, obedience looks like doing what's right even when it's costly. It means paying your tithes and offerings faithfully in the face of financial struggle, living with integrity in your business dealings, and choosing patience over quick schemes. Let me share a contemporary example. A friend of mine was running a small import-export business. The temptation was to cut corners, ignore contracts, or bribe officials for faster clearance, but he chose obedience, sticking to honesty and transparency. For years, his business grew slowly but steadily. One day, a major international company sought a trustworthy partner, and they chose him over competitors because of his reputation for integrity. Today, his company operates globally, employs hundreds, and impacts entire communities. This is what Psalm 112 speaks about. The obedient are generous and lend freely. Their children will be blessed. Psalm 112:5. Obedience releases a chain reaction. Generosity flows. Communities are blessed, and poverty gives way to abundance. Obedience is a spiritual posture. It reflects your belief that God's ways are not just good, they are profitable. When you obey, you show that you trust His system more than the world's system. Research backs this up too. Studies show that ethical businesses tend to outperform those that rely on shady shortcuts. Trust builds networks, opportunities, and loyal customers. The invisible law of sowing and reaping. plays out in human relationships as well as spiritual ones. Therefore, the blessing of obedience is twofold. Spiritual favor. God opens doors that no man can shut. Provision flows supernaturally because you've positioned yourself in the place of blessing. Practical favor. Your integrity attracts tangible opportunities and relationships that multiply your resources. A life rooted in obedience creates stability. Psalm 112 says, "They will have no fear of bad news. Their hearts are steadfast, trusting in the Lord." Psalm 112:7. The obedient do not live in constant anxiety over bills or debts because their trust is anchored in divine faithfulness. To apply this truth today, examine where you may be compromising God's principles for short-term gain. Are you obeying His commands in your finances, relationships, and work ethic? Are you generous even when it's hard? Are you trusting God's timing over your own? Obedience cancels poverty because it aligns you with a covenant that multiplies blessings beyond what you can imagine. This psalm is a reminder that obedience is not an obligation but a key to unlocking the floodgates of provision. When you obey, you become a living testimony of God's promise. He will never be shaken. A righteous man will be remembered forever. Psalm 112:6. The third key principle that Psalm 112 reveals to cancel the curse of poverty is the power of generosity. This psalm declares, "Good will come to those who are generous and lend freely, who conduct their affairs with justice." Psalm 112:5. Generosity is not just a nice-to-have quality, it is a spiritual law, an investment in God's economy that returns manifold blessings. Most people think, if I give, I will lose. This is the mindset of poverty, a scarcity mentality. But the moment you choose to give generously, you step into the realm of abundance, signaling to heaven that you trust God as your provider, not your bank account. Let's consider a simple yet profound example from everyday life. There was a woman named Sarah who was living paycheck to paycheck. Every month, bills piled up and the future looked bleak. Yet, she decided to give a portion of her income to help a local children's home, even though it meant tightening her own budget. Within a year, an unexpected job promotion and multiple financial blessings came her way. Sarah's act of generosity opened the door for God's supernatural provision. Why does generosity work like this? Because it reflects the heart of God. God is the ultimate giver. In John 3:16, the greatest gift is revealed. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son. Generosity is God's nature. When you give, you participate in that divine nature and position yourself to receive from the same source. Psychology confirms this principle too. Studies have shown that generous people experience greater happiness, better health, and more meaningful social connections. Generosity activates the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine, the feel-good chemical. But beyond physical benefits, generosity invites spiritual favor. Psalm 112 teaches that generosity cancels poverty because it creates a cycle of blessing. When you lend freely or give to the poor, you break the grip of fear and selfishness, which are major contributors to poverty. You declare that your resources belong not just to you, but to God's kingdom. One striking story is that of a business owner who started his company with a clear mission. 10% of all profits would be given to charity. During economic downturns, competitors cut back on giving, but he held firm. Because of his faithfulness, many doors opened, contracts, partnerships, and new clients attracted by his integrity and vision. His generosity became his signature, and his business grew even in hard times. Psalm 112 also links generosity to conducting affairs with justice. True generosity is rooted in righteousness. It's not about giving to feel good, but giving to uphold justice and fairness. When you manage your resources with integrity and give without selfish motives, God honors that. Here's a challenge. Look at your finances honestly. Are you holding back from giving because you fear scarcity, or are you trusting God to multiply what you release? Generosity requires faith. It's an act of rebellion against poverty's lies that say you'll never have enough. Remember the parable of the widows, Mark 12:41-44. Jesus praised a poor widow for giving all she had, not because of the amount, but because of the heart and trust behind her gift. The size of your giving doesn't matter to God. What matters is the obedience and faith you demonstrate. Generosity also shifts your mindset from "what can I get" to "what can I give." This simple shift transforms your life and cancels the curse of poverty. You start seeing resources not as limited, but as channels through which God's blessings flow. This principle extends beyond money. Your time, talents, and even words can be generous. A kind word, a helping hand, mentoring someone, or sharing knowledge can all break the chains of poverty, not just in your life but in others' lives. To summarize this key point, Psalm 112 shows us that generosity is a spiritual weapon against poverty. It's a lifestyle choice that invites God's blessing and multiplies your resources in ways human logic cannot explain. When you give, you demonstrate trust in God's provision, align with His character, and open the door for supernatural increase. One of the most profound ways Psalm 112 cancels the curse of poverty is by revealing the power of trust, trust that eradicates fear. The psalm says, "They will have no fear of bad news. Their hearts are steadfast, trusting in the Lord." Psalm 112:7. Poverty often comes disguised as fear of not having enough, fear of the future, fear of failure. But this psalm exposes that trust in God is the antidote to all those fears. Fear and poverty are closely linked. When you fear scarcity, you limit your actions, your dreams, and even your faith. Fear tells you to hoard, to compromise, to settle for less. It shrinks your vision and locks your potential behind bars of anxiety. But Psalm 112 offers a spiritual prescription. Their hearts are steadfast. This word steadfast means fixed, unwavering, immovable. The person who fears the Lord and walks in obedience develops a heart anchored so deep in trust that the storms of life cannot shake it. Think about a ship anchored in the middle of a raging storm. The wind and waves howl, but the anchor holds firm. That's what God's trust does in your heart. In my experience, the heart of a fearless person is not born but developed. It grows through trials, obedience, and a deepening relationship with God. Many people think that trusting God means ignoring reality, but no, that's foolishness. True trust is acknowledging reality, including challenges, and choosing to believe God's faithfulness above what your senses say. Here's a powerful story. A woman named Ruth lost her job during an economic recession. Bills piled up, rent was overdue, and fear crept in. Yet, she made a daily choice to trust God, declaring Psalm 112 over her life. Instead of giving in to panic, she volunteered at her church, helped others, and stayed committed to her faith. Within months, Ruth was offered a better job, one that came with benefits and growth potential. She said, "I wasn't fearless because everything was fine. I was fearless because God was with me." This fearless trust isn't reckless optimism. It's a deep spiritual assurance that God is your provider and protector. It frees you from the bondage of poverty mentality. You no longer scramble or panic. You walk in peace. Scientific research confirms the power of trust to reduce anxiety and improve decision making. People who cultivate trust in their lives tend to experience lower stress and make more effective choices, even in uncertainty. When you trust God like this, Psalm 112 promises you will not be afraid of bad news. This means, no matter what the economy does, what unexpected bills come, or what setbacks arise, your heart will remain steady. That steadiness attracts opportunities, builds resilience, and fosters wisdom. Fear, by contrast, is a thief. It steals your peace, your joy, and often your financial breakthrough. When fear controls your decisions, you stay trapped in poverty. But Psalm 112 declares a greater truth. The one who trusts in God is established forever. Their legacy, their impact, their provision is secure. This kind of trust builds generational wealth, not just in dollars, but in character, faith, and influence. The practical application here is powerful. Cultivate a fearless heart by meditating daily on God's promises, speaking faith over your circumstances, and refusing to be controlled by anxiety. Replace every fearful thought with a declaration from God's Word. Surround yourself with a community that encourages trust and hope. Practice gratitude even in hard times. It rewires your brain for peace. You may not be where you want financially today, but a fearless heart will carry you through. You will begin to walk in freedom, and that is the first step toward canceling every curse of poverty. Trust is a choice. Choose it today, and Psalm 112 becomes your foundation for victory. One of the most striking promises in Psalm 112 is that the righteous, those who live in obedience and trust, are marked by stability. The psalm declares, their hearts are steady, they will not be afraid, in the end they will look in triumph on their foes. Psalm 112:8. Stability is a powerful antidote to poverty, especially when the world around you is shaking. Poverty often thrives in instability. When your finances are unpredictable, when your job feels uncertain, when markets fall and emergencies arise, it's easy to be overwhelmed by chaos. But this psalm offers a promise. Righteousness builds a foundation so strong that no external crisis can bring you down. Stability here is more than just financial. It's emotional, mental, and spiritual. It means your life is anchored so deeply in God's principles that you stand firm regardless of circumstances. Consider the story of David Livingstone, the famous missionary explorer. Livingstone faced enormous hardships, disease, hunger, isolation, even threats from hostile forces. Yet, his life was marked by an unwavering stability of purpose and faith. That steadiness kept him focused, sustained him through poverty, and ultimately allowed his work to impact generations. His legacy proves that stability rooted in righteousness outlasts hardship. This psalm describes the righteous as steadfast, fearless, and blessed. This trio paints a picture of someone who is emotionally balanced and resilient. They do not collapse under pressure, but respond with wisdom and grace. In practical terms, stability means you create systems in your life that guard against poverty's chaos. This includes wise budgeting, disciplined saving, continuous learning, and surrounding yourself with trustworthy advisors and mentors. A real-world example comes from the global recession of 2008. While many lost everything, some individuals and businesses survived and even thrived. What set them apart? They had stability, strong financial discipline, diversified income, and faith-driven resilience. They didn't panic or make rash decisions, but trusted God's guidance and remained steady. Psalm 112 also connects stability with looking in triumph on their foes. This is a vivid image. Poverty, fear, and failure are your foes. When your life is stable, you don't just survive, you overcome. You gain victory over the forces that threaten to keep you down. The truth is, poverty tries to rob your peace, but a stable heart resists that robbery. It doesn't mean you won't face trials. It means you won't be defeated by them. Let me challenge you. What areas of your life feel unstable? Is it your income, relationships, or mindset? Where do you need to build steadiness? Psalm 112 tells us that stability is linked with righteousness and trust. The more you align your life with God's principles, the more stable you become. It's a step-by-step process, not an overnight fix, but one with eternal rewards. To cultivate this stability, anchor your identity in God, not in money. Develop consistent spiritual disciplines like prayer, meditation, and study. Build financial habits that promote security and growth. Seek wise counsel and mentorship. Practice patience and perseverance in trials. When you do these things, you position yourself to resist the curse of poverty. You become like a tree planted by streams of water, stable, nourished, and fruitful. Psalm 112 offers more than hope. It offers a roadmap to stability and victory. Choose today to live righteously, trust fearlessly, and build a life that no storm can topple.